Hi everyone, Sam from the Danger Planet here, and today we've got two very special guests to talk to us about the Vassal World Series of Malifaux. Hey everyone, so today we have two very special guests. We are joined by, I think, Brendan and Michael from the Vassal World Series Committee. Guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hey guys, I'm Brendan, otherwise known as Gubbins on all the socials. Nice to be here. Really glad to have a platform to talk about something that we're very deeply passionate about.
And I'm Michael, Grizzled Grog Dog on the socials as well, on the committee aside with Brendan, and super stoked to have this as a platform to chat about something near and dear to our hearts. So thanks for having us on.
Yeah, so let's just start off with you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and about your history with Malifaux. What crews you play and what masters you like and what you've really been enjoying experimenting with lately.
So I'll kick off. I started playing Malifaux back in 2016. Michael actually was the person who got me into Malifaux. Started off with 10 Thunders and Wave 2 of M2E and picked up Guild start of 3E just before the open beta closed up before release. I currently play the entire faction of Guild. I've just finished modeling out my Hoffman crew, so everything is ready for tabletop now, which is quite exciting, but enjoying mostly bit of Tull, bit of Nelly, bit of Hoffman at this stage.
Yeah, for myself, I joined in Arcanists and then almost immediately to Reses, just based on what people were not playing locally. Signed Brendan in along with a few others and started bullying them a bit, which was good fun, and then he started upskilling, and then so I needed to bring on the arms race and upskill myself to keep the bullying continuing. Eventually moving along to Explorers Society when they dropped, which was awesome, and then started gravitating more and more towards Vassal as a means to get in the more competitive games. It's hard to get games locally, but if you can hop online and play against the best in the world, I find that that's a really rewarding experience. So presently, lots of Explorers that I play, about 2/3 of the stable, I would say, with Lord Cooper being my favorite, although he's not always the best to actually play, so we often have to pivot to something a bit more competitive.
All right, well, that's actually, I think, a really good segue. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what Vassal is, and then also what the Vassal World Series or Malifaux World Series is?
Okay, yeah. So Vassal is a computer engine originally designed for peer-to-peer board games as a platform, but adapted a module for various tabletop war games over time as well. I think originally platformed for Warhammer 40,000, and then obviously Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It now encompasses pretty much any and all tabletop war games. If you're keen, there generally tends to be a community going around if you can find it. I think... Yeah, it's a fantastic, it's a top-down, two-dimensional, removes all the sort of terrain requirements and model elements, so you have access to absolutely every model, every time, which sort of provides, in my opinion, the most complete competitive experience.
And just for those of you who don't have Vassal on your computers, but are interested maybe after hearing this episode and getting involved, we are going to be putting a link in the video description to where you can download both the main Vassal program and the Malifaux Vassal module, which is required for you to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once you've acquired that, you can hop on board, join one of our communities. The World Series Hub, well, Malifaux World Series Hub specifically on Discord is where we like to hang out, organize. We have casual games, we have competitive games, and we have tournament games. Often run through an event, which we create a player pack for in advance. You will be up against a number of different players from around the world, so you'll experience different metas, and that can be quite satisfying to try your mettle against different types of playstyles. Often you'll have an understanding of what you think a faction should play like, and then you play against someone from Poland and you have to completely rethink everything, and it can be quite humbling, but it's also very enjoyable, so we hope you get involved.
Yeah, and we'll of course have a link to that Discord in the description as well. But gentlemen, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first got involved with the Vassal World Series and what made you specifically look for that experience? Like, why did you decide to kind of branch out and go online for your Malifaux?
I think actually the main motivating factor was for us in 2020, New Zealand experienced one of the most intense levels of lockdowns for the greatest deal of time, obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic. So us as competitive wargamers, we have an itch to scratch. So we sort of went looking for reasons to play the games that we love. Just so happens that a good friend of ours, Maniacal Cackle, who is quite involved in the Vassal scene just tangentially, extended the hand to us and brought us on board, and we sort of found our way into the World Series from there.
Yeah, just like you said, it was the only real way to get games in. We had a pretty strict curfew, and so if you wanted to flip fake decks and have some fun that way, you had to go online, so it made it a no-brainer for us.
But you're both on the committee currently, correct?
That is correct. So I joined the committee start of last year, so start of 2023. I onboarded for the shift across from the old server to the new server, and in my capacity I sort of am the policy guy. I operate a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and rules adjudication things and all that stuff behind the back of scenes.
Yeah, whereas for myself, I was invited in to just add some extra numbers, weight of numbers, more of the morale kind of figurehead there, I suppose you might say. We all contribute together and have sort of chats behind the scenes for the welfare of the actual server and on the player base, designing player packs and such. It's a team effort for sure. So I guess to give a definition of what the committee is, it's a group of players who've been part of the Vassal scene, I guess you might say, for a good long while. We generally try to hold ourselves to a good standard of like a good principle of gameplay and sportsmanship, helping others, and so then by invite we'll bring along people, and depending on how much time they have to give to the system, we can get some value out of them that way and help give back to this awesome scene.
That was going to be my next question. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the role of the committee, kind of what you guys do and what you see as your responsibilities?
So the committee has two main focuses. Obviously, as an events platform, we aim to provide a positive event experience for every person involved, and where possible that can mean things like just administering as many events as possible throughout the year. We obviously have it's a series, it's not just a couple of one-shot events and that's it. We culminate towards the end of the year in a top 32 group stage bracket, which obviously tapers off into an end of season final, where we crown our eventual yearly champion. The other aspect of the role is sort of fostering community. We're very, very big on providing a great deal of discourse where there is a positive exchange of information, especially about how we interact with the game and sort of develop the meta internationally.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about sort of how nuts and bolts the Vassal World Series works day to day for people who aren't familiar with it? Like, sort of what is a Vassal World Series event? How do they work? How do people find out about them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so we will post out a player pack through a number of channels, but the primary one being that Malifaux World Series hub. When you join the hub for the first time, you can sort of tick your role as a competitor if you're interested in being involved and hearing more about competitive events. And if you do so, when we tag you as a competitor in an announcement, then you'll be getting a heads up that an event will be coming. A player pack obviously established online, you can have a look there to see what the pools are looking like, and find out what the rule set should be. From there, we also have a full and complete terrain definition page on this, so that there's no disputes mid-game as to what different terrain is. We know that can often crop up on the tabletop. If you haven't had that chat beforehand, it can be quite awkward, so we just completely eliminate that by expressly saying what all the rules for all terrain are. You also see all the maps in advance because it's done on Vassal with express names for each of the maps. You'll actually know exactly what you're playing in advance, which gives you a chance to do some pre-planning and prep. From there, if you're interested in doing that, there's a pretty simple sign-up process. You just give us your Discord name, essentially, and the country that you're representing. Obviously, this being international, time zones do play a part in how we organize games. And so we give a week for each of our players to play a round. You reach out to your opponent for your round 1, round 2, round 3, so on, and you organize a time that would work best for the both of you guys. On the Discord itself, there are sections where you can actually hop in to speak with one another, whether you just want a 2-man channel to speak in or a larger one for people to hop on and watch. I guess that kind of tangentially adds on to another wonderful part of this is you can have a watch party of about 14 or 15 people all looking at a really competitive game from people from other sides of the world. So it's not just you and your opponent. There's a lot of extra knowledge and stuff being passed around. This is run through Longshanks as what we're currently using to determine scoring. So throughout the event, as you score and you enter your scores into Longshanks, we'll get a sense of who's doing well, and as you advance up, you'll be getting against, theoretically, harder and harder opponents until the final couple of rounds of an event where that's a real chance to test how good you are. We also extend an invitation to our top 32 event or top 16 event, whatever we end up deciding it to be, based on people who win such events. So if you enter one of our open tournaments and you take out first place, you'll automatically get qualified if you so choose to attend to our World Championship event. So we've just wrapped up the last one, in fact, and have a new world champion. So that's kind of
who is it?
That is Plag Alexander from Russia, an absolute beast. He's a menace. He's a great guy, but he's very, very good at the game and very difficult to beat.
Well, congratulations to him. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the experience of playing on Vassal? What do you think is the really biggest difference between playing these games on Vassal and playing in real life, aside from the obvious, like there's no board, there's no minis? What's like really different about playing with the World Series?
For me, the two biggest clear advantages, and there's probably several, but the two biggest for me is you can have auras set up just constantly. So if you might have a very hyper important aura that you really need to remember, you can just set it on your model, constantly showing that 6-inch aura around your model for whatever purpose that might be. And the second thing is that you can play it back. So if you nudge it one way that you shouldn't have or get your measurements wrong, you can undo to get back to where you were. In real life, especially at the top tables, shall we say, when someone does a nudge and then a take backseat, it starts to get pretty awkward pretty quickly. And so Vassal has a way to entirely remove that, while at the same time showing you all your auras and the measurements, so that you basically can't make any mistakes by accident. It's quite in front of there, and it's transparent for both players. So that's the thing I like the most, or those two things I should say. There's probably several others. Brendan, if you wanted to add any?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there is a major difference in terms of the social aspect of the game. One of the reasons a lot of us play tabletop war games is to socialize. And I do think there is a little bit of that removal through the online setting, but the trade-off is obviously an exposure to a greater number of total ideas from an international meta that sort of breaks the fourth wall of your LGS. And frankly, we've gotten a lot better at encouraging a lot more social interaction throughout games and things like that. So it's lessened, but you definitely the World Series is not intended necessarily to replace in-person play, but more to supplement it, to encourage sort of the most competitive version of Malifaux that we can possibly procure.
Yeah, great. So then I definitely feel that myself. Like, I love playing this game socially, and I think the kind of socializing I get online is it's not necessarily worse, but it is different because on the one hand it's more distant, but on the other hand it's a much greater variety of people and variety of metas. So why don't you tell me a little bit about sort of how you think the last year went? Tell us about the most recent events you've been doing, and sort of how, not just the World Series, I know you mentioned that, but things that you think you've really improved on in the past year, and things that you really are looking forward in 2024 to try to improve even more.
So I think the thing that we've improved on the most from 2023 to now is probably also, unfortunately, the same thing that we want to focus on for this year, and that really is providing a relatively homogenized player experience. Player packs, we try to advertise as far in advance as physically possible, and keep them relatively competitive. Our ethos behind them is to challenge our players, but keep the barrier for entry relatively low. And I think that we improved upon that in 2023, but definitely our biggest work on for this year coming is to provide a more smooth experience, particularly for people wanting to dip their toe rather than the experienced veterans coming through.
Yeah, great. So, basically, a lot of people, who get into miniature wargaming, I think they really are into the whole sort of in-person hobby aspect of it. That is definitely something people have said that they really like Malifaux, they want to play more, but they're not as interested in playing online. So I'd kind of like to hear from you. What are some things you would say to somebody who's maybe on the fence about playing online or joining the MWS, and what you might say to tip them over and make them give it a try?
In my experience, most people who had some trepidation and hesitation about actually trying it, when they do, they in fact find it to be quite fun, myself included. I was pretty, I guess, disparaged to give it a spin. I got into this for the painting aspect and the card aspect, which didn't seem to really be a thing when you're playing on mouse and keyboard. But honestly, after giving it a few games, I was converted pretty rapidly into just how elegant of a system it can be. So I would say the sheer number of people who have expressed probably the same doubts that you, dear listener, may have about playing a tabletop minis online, those people have had those doubts as well. And a lot of them are stuck around and really, really enjoy it. So until you've tried it yourself, you really don't know what the experience might be like. The internet is full of some wonderful people, not just some creepy strangers and such. So come and join us. We have a great time, and the community is very welcoming, and we do have a really strong casual base as well. So if you're not really looking for the most cutthroat of metas, that's totally fine. We have a bunch of banter channels and some really down-to-earth people who you can chat with about strategy or about just fun meme lists as well. That's a thing that we often chat about too.
And I think in terms of tipping people over the edge, it really is, I think it's important as someone wanting to get into the game, realizing, as with any step into the tournament sphere, there is a learning curve. It may be a little steeper moving through Vassal, so we definitely recommend getting a couple of games in just to learn all the hotkeys and all the little bits going forwards. I definitely don't recommend stepping straight into a tournament. Get at least sort of 5 games behind you. But for me, it really does benefit me having quite a limited schedule. Obviously, we're mostly adults with potentially kids, families, where it happens to be, and having the ability to get out to your LGS once a week, if that, can be quite challenging. And I found that the transition to slightly more online play than in-person play has made my schedule a lot more free. You can just be at home already, sit down, load up the laptop, and jump straight into a game. And it is quite rewarding. You get a lot more satisfaction out of it. The games tend to be a little bit quicker, just by virtue of not having to sit down and measure everything to the umpteenth degree. But it is overall an experience that requires a little bit of investment, but the ROI is very, very high in terms of what experience yield is for you.
And I can definitely second that on the schedule. So my son was born earlier, or late last year, I guess, in March. And obviously, with a kid, with a baby especially, your free time really falls off a cliff. So I've really been grateful for the presence of the MWS to be able to get some Malifaux games in when I'm not really able to do that as much in person. So can you tell us just a little bit about maybe some events you've got coming up, maybe a little sneak peek for the viewers so that they can know, what kinds of things they can expect to see if they decide to come join us?
From what I've seen, the very next event we have is a 4-round GG4 single master event. We try balance sort of single and double master events throughout the year. We know they are somewhat controversial, whichever way you go. Some people like it, some people prefer it the other way. This first one we have running up, which should be basically starting off early February. We'll have the player pack out early February at the latest. Will be a 4-rounder to my knowledge. GG4. We could go over the Vassal map names, I suppose, but probably easiest to just check that in the show notes, I imagine. So that's the very first one we have. Cool. We'll have other events to follow that as well, but that's the next one off the on the agenda.
We definitely do strive to provide a great deal of variety. There is obviously a way that the game should be played, or at least that the masses dictate this is the way that we like to play Malifaux, and that tends to be those 4 or 5 round single master events. But last year we had a lot of success with a few different things like no outer keywords or double masters and things like that. They had a lot of very, very interesting traction behind them, and so we do have a few things in the works this year to sort of see how that goes. We did also introduce our own sort of, not a ban list, but a please don't play this list for one event last year that had a lot of great reception. So we will be revising our list of models that are restricted in various keywords or what have you, and potentially be playing, I think, one event minimum of that this year, and that's the MWS restricted format.
Very cool. So thanks a lot for talking to us, guys. We really appreciate it. I guess what I just want to leave off on is sort of you guys, the committee, I know you rotate off it. People rotate on and off with time. But what I'd be interested in hearing from you is sort of what the Malifaux World Series has done for you as a player and what you hope that you can do for the Malifaux World Series to give back.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I've gotten back out of the Malifaux World Series, both as a player and as a committee member, is just a massive support network of good friends that I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to meet. I think that we have probably the single tightest, best community out of any tabletop war game that I've ever been a part of, or even any nerd sphere games that I've played. And I think to credit the people, that's obviously that community is driven largely by the people that involve themselves in it. It is what keeps bringing me back at the end of the day. I love the idea that we are providing almost a service to a large group of my own friends to really help them have a good time and enjoy the hobby in the way that they like to. I think that that's what we strive for. At the end of the day, our mission statement is very much, how can we best serve our community? How can we represent our community in the most fair way and provide them with an experience that they will find both enjoyable and memorable?
It's so wholesome and so selfless compared to my answer, which is get good. I definitely use this as a platform to just get good, get in lots of reps against the very best people. I will say along the way of that, though, I have made some great international friends as well. As Brendan's mentioned, some great guys in the UK, in Poland, and Russia. We have a few French players as well. There's even an Austrian guy who is a fantastic opponent. Always have a good yarn with him. And we get to bully the Aussies occasionally as well, which is, for ourselves as New Zealanders, fantastic. Any way in which we can give back to just keep advancing the global skill ceiling for the game and just get people getting more games in, especially if they've got busy schedules like some of us, we see that as a win. So anything we can do in that space, designing events, taking on feedback from everyone, that's what we're about. And so if we can give that back, certainly if I can give any of that back through feedback on events and creating play packs, rules lawyering things as well, for example, to make a game more correct, I suppose you might say, and more streamlined, we'll do all of that and more if we can.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it, and I just want to say myself as a World Series player, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to just match up against people all over the world, and as you say, to get good. I remember one of my games last year, one of the later events. I was traveling for a wedding that was in Italy, and I had to stop over 24 hours in Copenhagen, and I managed to pick up a game while I was in Copenhagen against somebody who was in, I think, Poland. And so rather than have this 9-hour time difference or 7 hours or however much it normally is, I was able to do the game at a reasonable hour. So that was kind of cool. But it was a lot of fun to just be sitting there in my hotel room, playing Malifaux against somebody, totally on the other side of the world from where I live. and being connected by that game. It just felt really like I was part of this larger community. And I know that Malifaux being a game that has, it's a bit smaller than Warhammer or some of the other very large games, but when you do participate in this kind of global community, you realize that it's bigger than you think it is, and the community really is, it's out there. There's a lot of people who love this game as much as we do, and I think you guys do excellent work in connecting those people and letting them play against each other. So I just want to thank you for everything you do.
Absolutely no problem. It is truly our pleasure to service our community. We wouldn't have it any other way.
Yep, absolutely. Agree.
So to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that if you were on the fence about the Vassal World Series or the Malifaux World Series, how do you guys prefer, by the way? Is it Vassal World Series, Malifaux World Series? What's the way?
It is Malifaux World Series, yeah.
Okay. If you were on the fence about the MWS, please, join that link, that Discord. You can, as I said, find the link in the description of this video. And, you don't have to jump into a tournament right away, as the guys said. You can sort of lurk for a bit, talk lists with people, play some Vassal games. I know that a lot of us Danger Planet guys are, looking for games at various different times. But, if you like this channel also, please, you can join our Discord. We talk Malifaux there. And if you're really interested in kind of contributing to us, please, there's going to be a link to our Patreon in the description, so feel free to toss us some support there. Otherwise, leave a comment on this channel, talk about your experience with the World Series, or maybe things you'd like to see the series do. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Till next time, thanks for stopping by the Danger Planet.